Hieromonk Panteleimon rejected the Florinian faction to which he belonged and joined the true Orthodox Church, where he was accepted by confession livelos, holy myrrh, and laying on of hands. On All Saints' Sunday, June 9, 2008, the Metropolitan Church of St. Demetrius of Akron officially received the Hieromonk Father Panteleimon of Croatian origin. He grew up in a papist environment and became acquainted with orthodoxy through the study of Orthodox books. He was baptized on Mount Athos by the abbot of the Gregory Monastery, Father Georgios Kapsanis. He then joined the Florin faction of Chrysostomos Chousis, became a monk in the holy monastery of St. Panteleimon of Patras, and was ordained a hieromonk by the Achaean Mr. Kallinikos Sarantopoulos. Unknowingly, he sought true orthodoxy in the Nicolaitans, but immediately discerning that Nicholas and those with him were acting according to the old calendar ecumenism, he joined the General Orthodox Church of Greece. His confession, which he composed himself, is as follows. Hieromonk Panteleimon Bilisic, Holy Bishop of St. Ekaterinis, P.O. Box 54, 19400 Koropai. Confession of the Orthodox faith of the Elahist among hieromonks. Panteleimon, to His Eminence, Metropolitan of Mesogaea and Lavriotica, Mr. Kyriakon, Holy Diocese of St. Catherine, Communication 1. Most Venerable Achaean Mr. Kallinikos, Holy Monastery of St. Theodore the Student, 205, Athakaya 2, Holy Synod of the Church of the Greek Orthodox Church of Greece, Kallinikos 32, 3rd floor, 106-82 Athens. Your Eminence, I am sending you the Libellon Confession, which I compiled to send to my previous bishop, Achaeus Mr. Kallinikos, through which I know him and the reasons for which, based on the Holy Canons 10 of the Second Ecumenical Council and 31 Holy Apostles, I am severing communion with him. Libello Spond, I accept and honor the Holy and Ecumenical Councils and the divine and sublime and salutary doctrines in them that were taught and proclaimed by our holy and God-bearing fathers, and to this the Catholic Church of Christ approaches, I accept, and to this I turn away. I turn away. And after the Holy Fathers of the First Council of Nicaea and the Seventh Council of Nicaea, the Second Council of Nicaea, who confessed and proclaimed, whoever transgresses the ecclesiastical tradition, whether written or unwritten, is anathema. Everything that is innovated or practiced after the ecclesiastical tradition, let it be anathema. And we of the ancient, we follow the institution of the Catholic Church. We preserve the institutions of the Fathers. We anathematize those who add or subtract from the Holy Church. This is how we think. This is how we speak. This is how we preach. The introduction of the papal calendar and calendar into the space of orthodoxy in 1924, and immediately after in many other local churches, demonstrates the introduction of the heresy of ecumenism into the space of orthodoxy. This new, that is, papal calendar has already been condemned, anathematized, and banned many times by many pan-Orthodox councils. With this, the new calendar church became schismatic, the same as those churches that, although they did not accept the new calendar, nevertheless had and have ecclesiastical communion with the innovators, a thing that the holy canons forbid. Only those who reacted, clergy and people, and those who broke off communion with the innovators, remained and continued on the path of the Orthodox Church of Christ, the one holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church. In 1935, 3 bishops of the official Greek Church rejected the innovation and publicly confessed that the new calendar state church, with the introduction of the papal calendar, became schismatic and performed sacraments invalidly, and that the children baptized by them, when they returned to the true Orthodox Church, must be anointed. Immediately, the 3 bishops ordained 4 more bishops. This was followed by persecutions directed by the ruling church and the state authorities. Later, some of these bishops returned to the new calendar, while the Bishop of Florinite, Chrysostomos, and those with him began to preach publicly that the church of the new calendar was not schismatic in action, but only in power. Bishop Matthew of Resthenes and those with him remained faithful to the first Orthodox confession, which they proclaimed immediately in 1924 and officially and synodally in 1935. Bishop Matthew made great efforts to persuade Father Chrysostomos of Florinite to return to the Orthodox confession, on the basis of which the Universal Orthodox Church accepted him as a hierarch. However, seeing that Father Florinite remained steadfast in his own new theories, in 1937 he broke off ecclesiastical communion with him. In addition to this malicious statement about not being in the power of schism of a new calendar schism, For Chrysostomos of Florina had made, through his official documents and publicly in newspapers and other heretical statements, such as, "We, the GOC, are only a guard, which preserves the traditional old calendar within the framework of the ruling Church of Greece." Far Florina promised that he would never ordain new bishops, and he kept this promise until the end of his life, because, as he said, he did not want the struggle to escape control, and so as not to violate the dignity of the ruling Church. He had even said that the synod of the new calendarists should appoint a metropolitan to act as the leader of the old calendarists. From their allography, we see that the late bishop of Rethina, Matthewites, tried to restore Father Chrysostomos of Florina to orthodox positions. He only sought to publish the 3 or 4 confessional positions from 1935, and with this, the union would automatically take place. On the contrary, we see, from the letters of Father Florina Chrysostomou, that he slandered Matthew of Resthenus, or insulted him, considering him to be deluded or theologically illiterate. Matthew of Resthenus and those with him sought the cooperation and agreement of other Orthodox archpriests in Greece and outside Greece. There was no response, and when he reached old age in 1948, almost 90 years old, exhausted by his efforts, pressured by the clergy and the people, he ordained another bishop on his own, and the two together ordained a third, etc. The canons stipulate that at least 3 or 2 bishops must participate in the ordination of a bishop. However, they provide that the ordination by one is valid when it is done due to some persecution or when there is an impossibility of finding other Orthodox bishops. This does not indicate arbitrariness or a provocation to create a schism. When the situation becomes peaceful, the Church accepts or rejects such ordinations. In the case of Bishop Matthew of Brethannes, the ordination was done out of absolute necessity and during the difficult time of persecution. He was also unable to find an Orthodox bishop in Greece or abroad. Immediately after the repose of the venerable Archbishop of the GOC, Matthew, Father Chrysostomos of Florina published that he was retracting all his erroneous statements, including in power and not in action, and that he was returning to the confession of 1935. For what purpose did he declare this at this specific moment? He himself gave the answer a little later when he declared in the newspaper Vradini, October 12, 1950, that the schism was caused by the old calendarists and that the official church had to appoint a metropolitan to impersonate the old calendarist so that there would be no damage to the authority of the church and the prestige of the hierarchy. And with this confession, which he never denied, in 1955 he died, and in accordance with the promise he gave to the ecclesiastical and secular authorities, he left his followers without bishops. When they once asked Father Chrysostomos of Florina why he did not ordain bishops, he said, "And whom should I ordain? You have bishops in Keratea." And yet they, instead of uniting with these bishops, sent their own archimandrite, formerly Matthew, Akakios Pope, to America to be ordained by bishops of the Russian Church of the diaspora for their needs in Greece. And thus they unexpectedly took a step by which they further consolidated and, as we see today, sealed the Florina Schism. There are official documents of the Russian Church in the diaspora that confirm the rejection of the request for the ordination of Akakios as Pope, and that the Russian Church in the diaspora follows the patriarchal calendar, considers the introduction of the new calendar as a great error, but has not severed communion with either the ecumenical patriarchate or the Greek archdiocese of the new calendar in America. Nor does it even consider them schismatics, and maintains spiritual relations with all the new calendar churches. Nevertheless, in 1960, Pope Akakios went to America to be secretly ordained by the Archbishop of Chicago Seraphim and the Romanian new calendarist, Bishop Theophilos Ionescu. The latter did not admit until the end of his life that he had participated in this ordination. Here the question arises: why did the Florinians receive ordination from ecumenists in America? These ordinations are uncanonical from any point of view, whether from a zealous, that is Orthodox, or from the side of the official churches, that is ecumenists, because according to their own confession, they should have been subject to the Greek New Calendar Church, which would have granted them a bishop to lead them as old calendarists within the sovereign church, as Father Chrysostomos of Florina had once proposed. Precisely for the above reasons, but also because the Russians of the diaspora had communion with the New Calendar churches, their own application to the Synod of the Russians of the diaspora, with Metropolitan Anastasius as president, had been rejected. Also, the former Matthean Hieromonk Auxentios was secretly ordained by Pope Akakios, and the Archbishop of Chile Leontios, known as the Latino-minded, who had come from South America, which ordination, for the same reasons above, is also uncanonical and schismatic. When Metropolitan Philaret ascended the throne of the Russian Church of the Diaspora and declared ecumenism a heresy and announced the cessation of ecclesiastical communion with the new calendar churches, representatives of the local churches of Greece and Cyprus of the true Orthodox Church went to America to consolidate the Russian Church of the Diaspora in their confession and to discuss the possibility of unification. In this way, they also wanted to achieve unification with the Florinian faction in Greece. The hierarchs of the Russian Church in the Diaspora, as it is said, listened to the confession of faith of the representatives of the true Orthodox Church with enthusiasm and unanimously accepted this confession. In the contradictory synodal document signed by Metropolitan Philaret, it appears that the Russian Church in the Diaspora accepted the validity of the ordination of Bishop Matthew of Brest in 1948, because this use of the ecclesiastical economy was carried out of the need to preserve orthodoxy. However, in order to satisfy Archbishop Auxentios' side, which was scandalized by this canonical error, they decided to perform a laying on of hands, which the exarchate presented not as to schismatics, but as a simple prayer of forgiveness, that is, as a simple formal prayer, while at the same time in the synodal document they stated that the hierarchy that derives from the ordinations of Matthew cannot in any way be compared with the schismatic ones. This exact decision of the Russians regarding the laying on of hands, which the exarchate under the then Corinthian Calliston and Kition Epiphanios in 1971 hid from the other hierarchs in Greece, to whom it declared that it did not accept the laying on of hands on schismatics, but a forgiving prayer, which it accepted with extreme economy, so that the unification of all Orthodox would take place. When this decision was published by Victor of Florin, formerly Matthewites, in the Joyful Messages, the hierarchs in Greece rejected it, while the hierarchs of the exarchate insisted on interpreting the laying on of hands as a prayer of forgiveness. Then letters were sent to the Russian Synod to learn under what meaning the laying on of hands was made, and they, through letters from Metropolitan Philaret, interpreted the laying on of hands as a prayer of forgiveness. When the people of Florina, with Archbishop Auxentios as their leader, learned that the Russian Synod of the Diaspora accepted the ordinations of 1948 as valid and fully recognized the hierarchy of Russia in the bishops of the true Orthodox Church, they began a dark propaganda campaign against the true Orthodox Church, which has not stopped to this day. They claimed that the bishops of the true Orthodox Church were ordained as schismatics, even to the point of anarchy, and that they, the Matthewites, are now obliged to submit to the hierarchy under Archbishop Auxentius. From the study of this issue and from what later became known, the conclusion emerged that there was no need for any prayer of forgiveness or laying on of hands. The Russian Church in the Diaspora simply had to accept the union with a unanimous confession of faith. However, a short time later it came to light that the Russians of the Diaspora are not consistent with what their proto-hierarch, Philaret, confessed. That is, they did not cut off their communion with the new calendarists and the old calendarists, ecumenists. In a short period of time, the true Orthodox Church was forced to cut off communion with them. From these basic facts, it clearly appears that the council of Archbishop Chrysostom of Chiusis, like the other councils that were created on the basis of the uncanonical and schismatic ordinations of Seraphim of Chicago and the heretical views of Father Chrysostom of Florin, it is in a state of schism. Here I consider it necessary to add that one of the representatives of the true Orthodox Church in the United States of America, Kallinikos of Corinth, stated in 1976 that in 1971 in America he received ordination as a schismatic, and that as a result of this ordination he was restored and became a canonical hierarch. This meant that he had violated and denied his priesthood, which is why the Holy Synod deposed him in 1977. The truth in this case is that the representatives of the true Orthodox Church in America, after their return to Greece, stated that such a laying on of hands as on schismatics was not done, but was simply a formal external act of a prayer of forgiveness. The rest of the clergy and people did not consider it necessary to take even this formal external action, regardless of whether the Russian Church in the Diaspora requested it. First, because the delegation was not sent to America to receive ordination and was not authorized to assume responsibility for such an action. The bishops, elders, and the people of the true Orthodox Church knew and believed that their own confession was in every way orthodox, and that the apostolic succession which originates from the ordination of the Venerable Archbishop Matthew is in every way valid, and the opinion and statement of Kallinikos of Corinth was treated as his personal choice, which did not agree with the confession of the true Orthodox Church. However, the conflicts regarding the events of 1971 did not cease. During 1992 to 1993, a new movement emerged instigated by Matthew of Attica and Chrysostom of Thessaloniki that the laying on of hands should be condemned in order to bring peace to the Church. This was rejected by the Synod because if the laying on of hands, which did not exist for the Church, were condemned, this would mean that it was indeed done to the other bishops of the Synod, and thus would destroy the true apostolic succession, which the bishops and elders of the true Orthodox Church received from St. Matthew of Brest-Denise. In order to advance the work of attacking the apostolic succession, these two bishops began to fight Archbishop Andrew as a supposed iconoclast. In their polemic against the supposed iconoclast, they themselves fell into iconoclastism, rejecting some traditional icons which had been venerated for more than 1,000 years in the Orthodox Church, or rejecting the inscriptions of some holy traditional icons. Thus, the 5 former metropolitans were excommunicated from the Church in 1995, imposing anathemas on those who did not agree with their malicious opinion. In 2005, some who treacherously opposed the apostolic succession again fell away and left the Church because they themselves were unable to maintain the pure and orthodox confessional line. Specifically, in 1998, there was an attempt to resume the official dialogue between the true Orthodox Church and a Florin order under Archbishop Chrysostomos Kousis, with the aim of finding a way to achieve mutual recognition. Behind all this is the intention of ecumenical circles of the New Calendar Church of Greece to resolve the old calendar issue with Archbishop Christodoulos at the head, and to gain recognition from the state, and to create an official old calendar church recognized by the ruling church, which will return the recognition. That is, it will become a union of the old calendar groups and subsequently an indirect or direct subordination to new calendarism. This effort is called Old Calendar Ecumenism because in order to bring about the union, they use the famous ordination of hands of 1971 to supposedly prove that the Florinians and the Matthewites come from the same source of apostolic succession, that is, from the Russians of the diaspora, the Florinians based on the ordination of 1960, and the Mattheists through the alleged ordination of hands of 1971. This characterized the new dialogue of the Florinians during the period from 1997 onwards. In this dialogue, the Orthodox theologian Eleftherios Koutsidis, as well as the venerable metropolitans of Mesogaia and Lavriotica, Kyriakos and Larissa and Tyrnavos, Panaretos, and those with them, reacted, seeing that in this way the dialogue would cease and the hope of union would collapse, as old calendar ecumenism wanted. The enemies of the confession distorted texts of theological expression, which are founded on the holy patristic teachings, in order to denounce Metropolitan Kyriakos. Bishop Panaretos had passed away for alleged heresy. Seeing that behind all this stands the interest of old calendar ecumenism, Metropolitan Kyriakos and those with him not only did not submit, but they brought to light all the concessions that were made during all these years regarding the confession. Among these revelations are mentioned the betrayal of the then Metropolitan of Piraeus, Nikolaios, with the excommunication decree of the Piraeus court in 1974, the uncanonical resignation of Archbishop Andreas, and his simultaneous act of stay in the rank of bishop, the blasphemous, diplomatic, and treacherous in many statements by Epiphanius of Kition, Pachomius of Argolis, Galatian of Peristeri, etc., regarding the death of the laying on of hands in Greece. Unable to respond to these basic accusations, they, authoritarianly and without having any right, because Metropolitan Kyriakos repeatedly denounced them since 2001 and officially declared them in 2005. They then sentenced Metropolitan Kyriakos to freedom, and while he invited them again to a dialogue on all issues, they cleansed him in an authoritarian spirit. As in 1937 and 1995, it is clear here that it is not the one who holds orthodoxy who is deposed or anathema, but those who retreat from the true confession and the genuine apostolic succession. Such uncanonical depositions have no substantive effect, but they have consequences to the detriment of those who sign such illegal acts. After this pseudo-purification, and after they believed that they had eliminated a key opponent of their old calendar ecumenism, they issued a long-awaited encyclical with which they wanted to say, "Now that the obstacles have been removed, let us do our work." That is, with this encyclical, they fully fulfilled the goals of old calendar ecumenism, which are to give substance to the laying on of hands, which was done with the acceptance that it was done in both America and Greece, to make the apostolic succession dependent on the Russians of the diaspora, to unite with the Florinians on the basis of this laying on of hands and on the basis of the Apostolic councils, and thus to bring about the solution of the old calendar according to the instructions of the late Christodoulou. This circular, although to the uninformed at first glance it seems good, in essence it is the culmination of betrayal. In it, while it is emphasized many times that the 1971 laying on of hands is rejected and condemned, an attempt which was also manifested in 1992 to 1993, Then, as we have seen, it was rightly rejected, because from then on it was denounced, and it became clear that, by condemning the non-occurring laying on of hands in Greece, laying on of hands would be made to appear as if it had been done. This attempt then failed. Now, however, in 2007, the same attempt became a real act by the Nicolaitans. Thus, they confirmed what had been sought for 35 years, namely the forgiveness prayer for the ordination to become canonical and with substantial significance. And therefore there is no fundamental obstacle to union with the Florinian factions and the ecumenists in general, and this not on the basis of truth, but on the basis of the ordination of 1971. Taking into account the above, I have been forced to cease all communication with you, based on Canons 15 of the First and Second Councils of Constantinople and 31 of the Apostles, and I am already approaching the canonical Holy Synod of the true Orthodox Church of Greece, which is presided over by His Eminence, Metropolitan of Mesogaia and Lavriotica, Mr. Kyriakos, the least of all hieromonks, Hieromonk Panteleimon Velisic.